Hey, it's Mazzy, and this is kind of a fun and special video. I have Zeb Feldman, the jazz detective, with me, and this is a preview of some jazz titles for Record Store Day on the 22nd of April, coming up Saturday in a few weeks. 2023, in case you're watching this later, it's still entertaining, even if it's after Record Store Day. Maybe you can seek out these records. And I've been a fan of a lot of Zev's releases over the last few years. I think I first saw I think it was the Bill Evans that some of the early Bill Evans that I got turned on to your work. But we're going to go through a pile of the records, and Zev's going to talk about them. I might have some questions. I've been listening to these for the last 3 weeks or so, and I've had a blast. And I kind of feel privileged. It's kind of fun getting them without clamoring Record Store Day. Although my record store when I do go to Record Store Day is a little more civilized now because if you get in line, I don't have to get at the crack of dawn really, but they hand out a list and they pull the titles for you instead of like running to the store, grabbing this and grabbing that and all that. So it's somewhat civilized. So, and again, some of these for you who are not vinyl people, some of these, and maybe all of them, I don't know, are on CD. You can mention that because there are some people who are the CD people. And so, welcome, Zeb, the jazz detective, and uh, give a little bio again for those of you who didn't watch last term or don't know you, how you got here, and where you're coming from as the jazz detective.
Sure. Well, thanks again for having me, Mazzy. It's really a pleasure to be with you today. I just consider myself very fortunate. I've been working in the music business for 30 years now. I started working in distribution for the first 14 years of my career, where I represented Polygram and Universal Music Group, and actually even Warner Music Group briefly too. But I really worked on the sales and marketing and distribution side. And really, catalog has always been something that speaks to me. And the record company definition, it was like releases that were 18 months or older. But for me, I'm really talking about older music. I love nostalgia. I've been a record collector for decades, my whole life practically. And over the last 13, 14 years now, especially when I showed up on the doorstep of Resonance Records, George Claben, my co-president at the label, really provided the foundation for me to get an education and learning about putting releases out. But it's always been driven by passion and personal interest and artists that I care about. And it's just unbelievable. I really can't believe like what I get a chance to work on a daily basis. And I'm very grateful. And this whole thing has snowballed. And over the last several years, having a understanding and encouraging boss in George Claben. He has also allowed me to go out and work for other record labels, such as Blue Note Records, and occasionally doing releases for Verve Label Group. And especially over the last couple of years, several years now, too, working with my dear friend Corey Weeds at Reel to Reel, a label that we founded in Canada together, and also my really good friends also at Elemental Music, Jordi Soleil and Carlos Agustin, who allowed me to start producing for them. And then last year, they gave me my own label imprint called Deep Digs Music Group, which is a conglomerate of these different labels. Of course, I have Jazz Detective, which is my jazz label. But later this year, you're going to see I have a Deep Digs Music imprint too, where I'm going to be putting out Sister Rosetta Tharpe. Stop me at any time.
As we go through this, I might ask you or jump in, but to maneuver the different labels and categories
Sure,
and solo
sure.
projects and group projects. It's enjoyable and it's confusing to me. It ultimately it doesn't matter on the end. If people like the artist and the music, it doesn't matter which label is from the listener side. Obviously, the business side, and I guess as we get into it, how do these things come to you? What I should say, how I just would describe you is in a way, not just as a producer, you're really an archivist and archaeologist of these records because you don't really do reissues as much as archival releases that have never been releases, like live broadcasts, live shows, maybe tapes of things that are discovered in the sock drawer under the underwear section that they find 40 years later. And I think that's what's interesting. So why don't you talk a little more about that and how the different labels, how do they come to you, or are you bring them to them?
Sure, it's really confusing. I certainly understand. And I would say that each of the releases that I do with the folks that I work with, they allow me to do this very specific curation style that I've kind of developed on my own. And it's from a culmination of different influences that I've admired and other qualities of record producers that have inspired me. But you're going to always find multiple essays and photographs and stories that really celebrate the legacies of these artists. But I'm lucky because I work with these different folks and projects come into my orbit, Mazzy, because of a variety of different ways. It could be really I find a recording and it fits the POV of a label exec that I work with who is a really big fan. It's really so much driven by passion and love and which artists do we like and walking that fine line of business and commerce. Hey, can we make the numbers work? I hate to say that, but we have to live and die by
Of
numbers in
course.
business.
Yeah.
But it's been really a blessing. So, I've been working for some different labels and having a chance to really expand working with the folks, for instance, at INA in France, which represents the ORTF radio archives. In most recent years, I've continued working with them for about 7 or 8 years now, and we are unearthing previously unreleased recordings. But I've been working as of late with my good friend John Fowler, who was one of the officers at the original Left Bank Jazz Society in Baltimore. And he made me a co-custodian of the tape archives with him. So for the
Nice.
last number of years, I was taking literally suitcases full of reel-to-reel tapes back to California where you got to do a hand inspection at the TSA. It takes about an hour so it doesn't go through the machine for the x-ray. And we've been digitizing this material. First, it was my good friend George Claben at Resonance that said, you know what, Zeb, this is important. Let's hear what does on those tapes, but I want to have first dibs. And as it turned out, he wasn't always so interested, but there were other people. And Corey Weeds, who I hope more people will get a chance to know. He is an amazing entrepreneur, businessman, music fanatic, musician, tenor saxophonist. And he has been doing a lot of great work bringing music to the people with his label Cellar Live. But a few years ago, we created an imprint together called Reel, REEL, to REAL, the realization. And he has stepped up and came into a place where I really needed him. And he got bit by this archival bug. So he was like, hey, what tapes? And we started looking at the Left Bank. Well, some folks may remember we did Etta Jones live with Cedar Walton Trio a few years ago for Record Store Day. A couple years ago, we did Roy Brooks Understanding the Burnin' recordings with Woody
I
Shaw.
have the Roy Brooks. I have the Roy Brooks.
Yeah, and now we have these three new releases that we've produced together. Two of them are coming out on his label that we worked on all three together, and that's Shirley Scott, Queen Talk Live at the Left Bank, Walter Bishop Jr., Bish at the Bank, yep, and Sonny Stitt, Bop It in Baltimore, and Bishop. And Corey and I co-produced all three of these together. And you may say to yourself, well, wow, three Left Bank releases. Well, we really wanted to make an explosive event to celebrate the memory of this club and the legacies of these artists. You're holding Walter Bishop Jr. there. And oh man, I mean, John Sellards, our designer, did an unbelievable job. He worked on all three of these releases, putting them together. We did interviews and essays with individuals. And we have A. Scott Galloway. A lot of folks know him from Wax Poetics and a lot of other writings that he's authored over the years. And he was the perfect guy. So,
What a cool crown! Can I get this in the reel to reel gift shop? I like that. I like hats, as you can tell.
I
So
think he would look very good in that, Mazzy.
let's go into some of these
Sure.
records in detail, and you
Sure.
can go back and continue the story because people
Yeah.
want to see and hear about the music. As I said to you, and I did a preview video on these a few weeks ago, so I'll put a link below to that. But I like to hear because I've been listening to these for a few weeks now, and again, these come out on Record Store Day coming up in a few weeks. But I hadn't heard any of the like the '60s Walter Bishop stuff, and I got into him a little bit from the Black Jazz label out of the
Sure.
Oakland in the '70s, and those have been reissued on another label. Those records, and they're really interesting. It's like soul jazz and a little more funky that period. So I know that period of him, and hearing this, what his piano playing, and of course Harold Vick on here is smoking too. I mean, I love this one. This is one of my favorites of this stack. It's hard. It's kind of probably with you. It's like choosing your favorite child. But obviously, for different times, different reasons, the sound is good on this, and just it's a nice performance. Tell me about this one.
I think Walter Bishop Jr. is very important. I fought very hard to put this one out because we actually had several different tape reels from concerts that occurred at the famous ballroom and also the Madison Club under the Left Bank Jazz Society in Baltimore in 1966 and 67. And it's this band with Harold Vick, Lou McIntosh, and Dick Burke. But let's talk for a moment about Walter Bishop Jr. He was a bebopper. He played with Charlie Parker. He came from a different era and generation, and he is really a master pianist. And I just like yourself, I've been turned on to a lot of his work that I find in the used bins. The Black Jazz label, Muse, Soul Village, I think about, which was Brett Premack's first liner notes, I believe. But I really think that Walter Bishop Jr. from the piano chair is a guy who was rooted in tradition, and he was really carrying he was carrying this torch for bebop jazz. But and he recorded and lived through the 1970s. But I'll tell you this, I don't think we talk about him enough. I love the labels. I love the artwork. I love the presentation. I wanted to build something fit for a king, as did Corey. We shared that mission
I
together.
I just
Again,
noticed. I didn't notice it before. I didn't look. Kevin Gray cut this.
yes, he did.
Yeah.
Kevin Gray cut this. This was also This was also pressed at Standard Vinyl in Canada, which has been a really great pressing plant that a lot of our other productions have come from. And but Walter Bishop Jr. matters. Harold Vick matters too, and the whole band. But it's just a reminder. But there was this thing. The tapes are sitting in the archives, or we could be trying to find a way of putting it out. And we were all taken by the music. We thought it was absolutely great, burning. And this is a collector's thing. This is a tape. These come from tapes. They were not the perfect recordings, but the music is important, and it overall sounds very good.
I
I
think
think
this sounds really good, actually. This
great.
LP sounds great. Yeah,
I
Days of
just say
Wine and
that.
Roses. I mean, it's such a sometimes not people who are new to jazz will start looking at these jazz albums and even someone like Miles and see these songs, and if they're coming from the rock venue, they think, oh, that's some schmaltzy song. But these jazz artists really twisted them and turned them around. Yeah, like Someday
Mhm,
My Prince Will Come. Going to Miles, for instance, and
mhm.
he's not the only one that covered that in the jazz realm. And it's like the Kid Disney thing, which are amazing melodies, and just really made it something completely different. That one but I really like this. And Quiet Nights, isn't that the Astrid Gilbert or the Joe Beam,
Yeah,
whatever? Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, it
yeah, yeah.
is. But it's really nice. I mean, I felt like I've been on this mission of trying to bring this music out there. Recordings that really matter. Not everything from the archives gets to see the light of day, but these tapes were sitting packed away. And I was like, after Corey and I listened to it, we really felt the energy and was taken by it. And I'm so grateful to Corey, though. It really takes a lot of determination and resilience and being able to, stand up and say, hey, we're going to do this. It takes a lot of resources for a label, a lot of generosity, and a team of people.
And
Well,
this is from Corey too, right? This was
this
great
is
too.
into both
Yeah.
of us, right? Corey and I produced this as well, except the last one was on reel to reel. Now, you're going to ask yourself, it was Shirley Scott and Walter Bishop. Corey and I made a little deal. I said, look, you put out the Walter Bishop and the Shirley Scott on reel to reel. We're all going to work on these together. And I said, and I'll put the Sonny Stitt on mine. But let's talk about Shirley Scott. trailblazer, very important. As the years gone on, we recognize her contributions and how great her legacy was. And these were recordings from 1972 that was just, hey, there was a tape, let's listen to it. Wonderful photography. That came from the great Don Schlitten, by the way, who is a dear friend of mine at 90 years old. And you know,
This
we
one's great. I love that shot.
that's a Schlitten pick. And
Is
Don was
this is
the
this
art.
from the particular concert or no?
It's not,
No.
but this is special. Let's talk about this. So
Okay.
you'll find that photo and the front and back cover come from a photo session that I had been made aware of, made by the great Raymond Ross. Raymond Ross was a guy that lived in New York and was at Slugs and all these different clubs. And he had these pictures, and oh my gosh, there was like a series of succession of these different shots, and it just came together. It really works out that way sometimes for the aesthetics. And, you know, we cast a wide net with different photographers looking for Shirley Scott pics, but we really looked out. And John Sellards, again, the guy that designed all three of the left bank, he is to be commended. He's a brilliant artist. And we had some ideas in Touchstone. Hey, it'd be great to make it look like something from the early 70s and different ways of describing it. But this is important. And it's George Coleman and George Coleman on tenor sax, the legendary Bobby Durham driving the force on drums, who's sounds, I mean, he's hitting it hard. And also the great Ernie Andrews, a lot of people know. We lost him sadly last year, but he was a great vocalist as
Yeah, I
well.
found that George Coleman's really mixed hot on it, or he's up on this
Mm-hmm.
almost more than Shirley
Mm-hmm.
in a way, you know. But you know,
Sometimes those things happen though, because I think when they
yeah.
made this recording, let's talk about how lucky we are to have these recordings, Mazzy. These recordings were made on tape, never intended to be a record release. The Left Bank Jazz Society's engineer and officer, a gentleman named Vernon Welsh, he sold cars during the week. And like a lot of other folks that all worked at the Left Bank, they had this job working for this nonprofit, bringing the music together. Well, the tapes were recorded when an artist said yes. Two things happened. The artist was given a set of the tapes, and then the club kept it, and they would play it back because the individuals that worked at the club didn't have a chance to listen to the music properly. So they would have a playback session on the following Wednesdays where they would have staff meetings. But this release also, the Shirley Scott, once again, mastered by Kevin Gray, pressed at Standard Vinyl in Canada. And I like this release a lot, and I'm glad that it exists. You know, and but you know, these are really time capsule documents. They're limited editions. They're for collectors, but the music is great. Shirley Scott, like I said, now is someone that it seems like we're talking about more than ever. You know, I've been collecting those prestige records from her for a number of years now, and what a recorded legacy in music she had.
And that Eddie Lockjaw Shirley Scott collection that just came out too.
Oh, on
It's
craft.
on fire. It's on fire. You know, I like that you talked a little bit about. I kind of got aware of you, obviously going back probably to Bill Evans. Didn't you work also on the Monk Palo Alto?
I
um,
did.
a
Yeah, I
little
was
bit
very
on
fortunate.
that.
Yeah.
But also, ironically, coincidentally, when you reached out to one of the photographers I represent, Michelle Clement, for a possible thing. I mean, who knows? She used to photograph Tony Williams many years up to his death. Unfortunately, they were really close friends, and she worked on his later mid 80s to early 90s Blue Note stuff. This was a photograph she took for the cover. I put it up today just because I wanted something instead of that John Lennon picture I usually have here, jazz related. This is the cover of Angel Street album he did for Blue Note. But you had reached out and just so you also as an archivist and searching for sound recordings, you have to wear all the hats and I come from the photography side, obviously, with as an agent and negotiating things and researching things when people are looking for stock or for assignment work. So hearing your name when Michelle mentioned your name, I know that guy. I didn't know you personally, but it's kind of the small world scenario thing, which is kind of cool. So I appreciate that you really have to go looking for archival and photographs that either relate or around the same time period, correct?
Yeah, we do. I mean, to me, I'm on a mission. It's great to have the music, but I don't want to stop there. I really want to curate and build an experience, if you will, visually, not to mention sonically, of course, with the music, but having a presentation with numerous essays and liner notes and speaking with musicians who knew the musician, or it could be a producer that was there. And you're holding up here Sonny Stitt.
This one is great too. I love,
Thank you.
I'm a big, this bopping in Baltimore. I mean, it's funny, in the quote, I'm part of in my scenario, in my videos, the quote, the vinyl community. But it goes beyond that. And everyone has jumped on the last few years. All these rock people I knew who were collecting music and other genres, literally in the last 5 years or maybe less and some more, jumped into jazz for the first time. And they might be 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, and now because of, for instance, Blue Note and Tone Poets and Chad Kassem's things and everything. So everyone's exploring and learning about these things. But I am a huge bop fan, and my favorite jazz artist is Charlie Parker. Kind of an obvious choice, but I find a lot of people don't go back to beyond before 1950s. Now, this is later, obviously. This isn't that. So let's talk about this and
Sure.
how this kind of title came about and the music on this record.
Well, here was another instance. There were two reels of Sonny Stitt. I believe inside the booklet on the back, we actually have a photograph of them. But Sonny Stitt, Baltimore, Boppin' in Baltimore really captures there you go. There are the original tape reels, if you will. They are literally the tapes that this music came from. And again, this was a discovery that we made. And Corey Weeds and myself were really taken by the music. These are recordings made on a wonderful day in 1973 with the incomparable Kenny Barron on piano, the great Sam Jones on bass, and the legendary Louis Hayes on drums. These are photos. That's a Christian Rose photograph. We work with the Christian Rose archives in Paris, and we've uncovered a lot of great photos on my productions over the years. But again, wanted to really tell the story of the greatness of this man. This man, Sonny Stitt. Again, we talked about a guy from another generation, talking about Bird, talking about bebop. Sonny Stitt to me is a very important figure. He's one of the great gunslingers, if you will. He was a guy who had such an incredible ability to play his instrument that you would not want to sit in with him, because as numerous stories have gone, he would cut guys off at the legs and you couldn't keep up with him. He's one of the greatest musicians in this music. He has a very important legacy that needs to be celebrated. Now, for this project, we enlisted the great author and journalist Bob Blumenthal to write the main liner notes. And this release right here, it was actually Sonny Stitt was mastered by Bernie Grunman, and this was pressed at Optimal in Germany. And
There's the BG. I see the BG.
yes, sir. Yes, sir. And we interviewed Mr. Barron and Mr. Hayes for the package as well. And it's a great listen. And we also I had the good fortune of working with Sonny Stitt's children, Katia and Jason Stitt. And as they told me, Zev, they said these Left Bank concerts, this is on my label, Jazz Detective, but again, Corey Weeds and I we worked on this together. But this was important for this Katia and Jason Stitt, Sonny Stitt's kids, because this was a local gig. They lived in the Washington, D.C. area. So when dad would play at the Left Bank, those were concerts that Katia and Jason as children got to attend. They got to see their father a little closer to home. And it's very special. I want to also say that here in the Washington area, if you're in the DC area on Record Store Day, April 22nd, we're going to be doing a roundtable forum discussing the Left Bank Jazz Society with Katia Stitt, myself, John Fowler of the Left Bank Jazz Society, and Joe Lee of Joe's Record Paradise. And we're going to be doing this celebration at the store, I believe at 2 p.m. I would love
What's the date?
It's going to be 2 p.m. on Record Store Day, Saturday, April 22nd in Silver Spring, Maryland. And Joe's Record Paradise is the place. Google it, check it out, right on Georgia
Wow.
Avenue. And guess what? Here's another interesting tidbit. So we are doing the event for Record Store Day in the basement of the bank that Sonny Stitt used to pay the mortgage at. And this was another interesting tidbit that Katia said. Zeb, you don't understand. We used to come, this is where my dad would pay the mortgage, it was upstairs in the bank. Joe's Record Paradise is located in the basement of the former SunTrust Bank
So
building.
it's you know
So,
that I just have to say a personal note on that because my
sure.
one of my first record store jobs, or a second store I ever worked in San Francisco, Inner Sunset, was called the Record Factory, small Bay Area chain, and it was in an old Bank of America building, and high windows, and the windows were painted with these sort of nude Maxwell Parrish type of artwork, very 70s like. And there was a balcony with a used record store, and of course we'd go down the vault. And I hate to say, I can say this, there's a statute of limitations. We'd go get stoned down in the vault and then come back and work. So, but there's my bank connection. So no one out there really cares, but I had to throw that in just to get a
I think
personal touch.
that's pretty cool. But we'll be at Joe's Record Paradise on the 22nd, celebrating all these releases we're talking about, but especially the Left Bank Jazz Society. But I can't say enough good things about Sonny Stitt. He was carrying tradition again, a bebopper. When I think of the 1970s and some of the music, I think of Barry Harris and Sonny Stitt and those words, "Bird lives," and those words were really prominent, and they kept the tradition going. And you just listen to this music. I just think it's very exciting, and I'm sure other people are going to enjoy it. I also want to thank my executive producers, Jordi Soleil and Carlos Agustin, for their generosity and support and allowing Jazz Detective to happen and allowing this project and being open to, hey, we're going to do it a little different here. Corey Weeds is going to put two on his, and we're going to put one on mine, and we're going to promote them together. And they let me
You need
drive.
a whiteboard and a chart to get all this in line to figure it out.
You'll see it at Record Store Day
Yeah.
in the stores on the rack. And
Before I want to end up with the two ones that are my favorites, but before that, we're like in the halftime show here. I want to
okay,
talk about the one. I'm going to say the elephant in the room, but some people ask, okay, this was a limited edition 5 years ago. This Eric Dolphy musical prophet. Now I bought this, I don't know, 217, 218, whatever it came out, three record set. This is unbelievable. I mean, some of it is accessible, some of it's out there. I mean, it's not accessible. Some of his stuff, Dolphy stuff, tends to be, free jazz, a little out there.
mhm.
But this is an amazing package, and this one was limited to 30 to 3,000 back in the at that time, and it sold out really fast.
It sure did.
And
I got a lot of hate mail. Why didn't you make more?
well,
For
that's always the case. I
years.
mean, you make more. Look at what's happening now with some of these like UHQRs and one steps. You make more, and they're sitting around. Which record? It's good that records, I mean, in a way, sit around. But when you're doing these kind of things, I know the investment. You don't want dead stock either. So I'm sure, especially 5 years ago, it's hard to gauge what the audience would be. Now, I know you said something to me when I first saw this. I realized, oh, they changed the cover. This is now 4,000 copies. This
Mhm,
is they changed the back cover photograph.
mhm.
They used a newer photo in the back here, a more period piece, probably the same as this session. It looks like here. Um, and I know you mentioned to me off camera there are some other differences you're going to share in a minute, but
Sure.
as I said in the video when I showcased it, some people get all wonky about, oh, I thought it was limited and now it's, to me, I equate it again to photography and art. You can have an edition, like a 2000 edition of 11 by 14 prints that's assigned by you can have other editions. Now, some people think that's cheating, but it's not. That's the reality of things. And if there is a demand, you do a different edition. I mean, in some cases, that you do edition in color vinyl, maybe not you, but other people. So tell me
Sure.
about what made you do this again and the differences.
Really simple. I'm going to put it like this. First of all, this is a really important group of recordings here that were originally made by Alan Douglas in the 1960s. And these were recordings that we found thanks to the great musician and composer and historian James Newton, who had been holding the suitcase of reel-to-reel tapes that belonged to Dolphy. And we had a chance of putting out these original albums plus extra material that had never been released before. And I think I even
Is this
have.
the Alan Douglas who worked with Jimi Hendrix?
Correct.
Yeah. Okay.
And you know, these releases originally came out on his label, but here's the important thing. We were able to, in 2016, greatly increase the some supplemental repertoire. But what happened was we put it out. Oh, Robin D.G. Kelly. There's a photo of me at the Library of Congress in Washington going through Mr. Dolphy's sheet music and other belongings that he had there. Um, this is really one of the most important projects that Resonance Records that we've done. George Claben and I had said for a very long time, wouldn't it be great if we came across Eric Dolphy that had never been out before? And this project allowed us to do this. It was critically acclaimed, and you know, we had testimonials from Sonny Rollins, Sonny Simmons, Henry Threadgill, Nicole Mitchell, Steve Coleman, David Murray. It's got a wonderful booklet, lots of photographs, Val Wilmer, Chuck Stewart. But here's the distinction this time. I mean, if you're an Eric Dolphy fan, I really think that this is essential Dolphy. And it's not all out there. I think there's actually some very accessible inside too. But you know, Eric Dolphy is someone that really matters. He's a very important figure in this music. He has been gone for so many years, like 60 years now. So we put out, let's talk about the first issue in your right hand. That's the 2016 release. The photographs front and back of that release and the new release are by the legendary Chuck Stewart. So, you know, bottom line is that the edition, the first one sold out so fast. And for years and years and years, people have said, will you ever put it out again? Now, if it hadn't been for that sort of demand and constant reminders of how important this release is, we probably wouldn't have done it. But because of the importance of the music, we went to Record Store Day and we said, listen, would it be possible to do a reissue, a re-release? We did 3,000 the first time, but here's what we did. We modified the packaging, 2 new rare photos of Eric Dolphy on the front and back, same photographer, Chuck Stewart, just different shots. But for this pressing, we originally used Bernie Grunman for Bernie Gray. We used Bernie Grunman on the 2016 release, and that was pressed at RTI. Now for this new edition, this one right here, this time we
I'm
had
getting confused here with this, like juggling.
I know, it's switcheroony. Yeah. But Kevin Gray cut the lacquers this time. And then we have a pressing plant in Canada that we use called Le Vinylist. We also use them for the Jaco Pastorius reissue of Truth, Liberty, and Soul. They are a great audiophile pressing plant in Canada. And, you know, it says 180, but the records might be even a little closer to 200 grams.
So it was recut. It was recut?
Yes, absolutely. We had the first issue was Bernie Grunman. This new edition is Kevin Gray, and we have a different pressing plant. Again, Levine.
So you're going to get someone on YouTube. It probably won't be me. I just can't do this anymore. To do these shootouts, BG versus KG. You know, Eric Dolphy shootout. Believe me, someone's going to do it, and I challenge you out there, some of you watching. Someone's got to do it. So I can't do it. I just don't have the stamina, but for this, and it does at this point, if you're not comparing, it doesn't really matter. And I don't want you to necessarily have to tell me which do you prefer, because you know they're different.
My children,
you actually hear a difference? I mean,
I just think there is a different. You know, you'd have to ask Bernie and Kevin that. And I think they all have their proprietary technology and their own methodology for the way
and their ears are different too. You know, their ears are different. I mean, Bernie's probably 10 years older than Kevin. Not that that matters, but they just have a different approach in something. So it would be interesting. I may pick one side just for the fun of it, not to record it.
Mhm.
But I did not know that until you mentioned, oh, there's another difference, Mazzy. I love
Mhm.
that.
But you know what? If we were going to do it, we wanted to make there would be some sort of different. We went out of our way to make some different distinctions on these
That's a
releases.
cool shot.
Jean-Pierre Loire at the Jacques Peche in Paris, and that's the original cover for Iron Man,
Yeah,
which
look
was
at
an
this
album
great
that I got familiar.
trifold.
Yeah, in conversations and
This is a great package. I remember when I bought this 5 years ago, one of my favorites, and it's really interesting, and you really have to invest yourself and pay attention. This isn't not background cocktail music, but there's nothing wrong with that. It's just a really kind of cool record, and I highly recommend it. Anyone out there, if you didn't get it last time, and I bought it last time, check it out this time. So I know that's my sales job, but if I like the music, it's the music. I say on my channel, it's the music, stupid, not calling you or anyone stupid, kind of like it's the economy stupid thing. And I think that's what it's about with these records. So
and
and
you got
look
to
at that
check out
cool
the
pork pie hat, like influenced by Lester Young, maybe, huh?
yeah,
You know.
yeah, yeah. It's a great project, and there's a lot of really great writings that went into that in design and work. And Burton Yount was my designer on that project to design the covers. Did a really remarkable job. But Eric Dolphy is timeless, you know.
Well, let's move on to
Okay.
the perennial. Every year it seems like there's a Bill Evans, and let me just say this: you're going to talk about it, but I don't know if I was pleasantly surprised, but I just I love this record, and I like that it's three record set. There's a section on the LP of this is Denmark 65 first with his trio in Denmark, and then there is a LP2 is half solo on one side, and then with the orchestra Denmark, and then side three is the trio 66 and 69. And I tell you what really surprised me how much I loved uh, the orchestra side, because I really liked how, and I said it on my video, how the intro to and into Waltz for Debbie reminded me of these roadshow overtures, like from West Side Story, the old movie road shows, maybe before your time, but you go to see Lawrence of Arabia or West Side Story, and there'd be like 20 minutes of music that was part of the projection that was made for that, not just random music. And
Sure
it
it was.
leads into him playing Waltz for Debbie, and it's such a gorgeous side of music. So, talk to me about this recording.
And by the way, I can't help but think about it's a mad, 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 mad world. They've got that
Exactly.
overture that starts the movie, right?
Yeah. All those movies, like in the 60s, road shows was a big thing. Those magnificent men or flying machines, all that stuff.
Well, let's talk about Bill Evans' treasures. These are really treasures that are
And
in
this
a
is Bernie
variety.
Grudman, too. Okay. BG.
Correct. Yeah, and this was pressed at Memphis here in the
Okay.
States. Um, so let's talk about this. So we have solo, trio, and orchestra recordings from Denmark made between 1965 and 1969. They're wonderful recordings, and they are also incredibly rare because they have never been released in any configuration before. It's never been listed in any discography, and it's never been leaked. These are brand new recordings out for the very, very first time, and they really capture Bill Evans at a really incredible creative period in the mid 60s. And you can see this wonderful Jan Persson photo with Marty Morell and Eddie Gomez. And that was actually recorded, I believe, at the session. Um, and, you know, these recordings come from a gentleman named Ole Matheson, who was from Denmark. He was a producer with the Danish radio. And he was the guy that put on, you know, documented these recordings. But again, never before released in a variety of different formats, including solo, including the trio, including trio recordings with the great Niels Henning Orsted Pedersen and Alan Dawson, which I believe was the only document. I got to double check that. But incredibly, some rare gems. These are treasures. But I got a
They're
phone
pristine
call.
recordings, too. They sound amazing. Yeah.
We were very lucky to
Yeah.
have these, but I have to credit my executive producers on this project, Jordi Soleil and Carlos Agustin, who found the tapes in the winter of 2022. I got a email and then a phone call And they were like, Zev, you're not going to believe this, but we have these recordings. Nobody's got these, and they are great. And they sent them to me, and I was amazed. And I've been working with the Bill Evans family now. Believe it or not, this is my 10th production that I've done with the estate of Bill Evans. The family and the musicians are all involved in this, and it's really been a blessing to put this out. Um, and I want to say also that, for this release too, Mark Myers has returned to the liner note chair for us. I consider him someone that is just one of the great experts of Bill Evans's music, and I think that his notes really go into a lot of detail about how wonderful this is. We also had a chance to interview the Danish discographer on Bill Evans, Peter Larson, about these recordings too. And lastly, we also spoke with Rand Blake and Matt Shipp. These release of Bill Evans is a 2 CD, as is everything else that we have that we've been talking about. They
So
do have
everything's compact disc also.
they do,
Are those record store day or are those just general releases?
those are general releases, but for the most part, they're kind of limited too. We've really had to be very careful about the amount of manufacturing that we put into these because our whole game plan really is it's not really long tail. It's really about it's a special event. Let's get it out there. We publicize it within a window, and let's try to ideally ship sold out if we can. And there's a lot of risk in this, but this Bill Evans project I think is going to be a revelation for a lot of people who think that you've heard it all. And it's been inspiring because, like we were talking about earlier, there are people that are not your atypical jazz fans that have been discovering all these releases. And Bill Evans now, interestingly enough, has really become one of the flagship artists for Record Store Day. And you're right, it seems like every event I've probably had a hand in something for the last few years. And guess what? Mazzy, it's not over.
Okay. Are you going to give us at the end of this video a preview of things to come, maybe kind of a hint?
Yeah, but I'll tell you more. There's going to be another Bill Evans of unissued material coming later this year, and we're not done. And it's really been an
Of course.
embarrassment of riches and just a good fortune and good luck for all of us, including
What period can you say?
1960, mid 60s.
Ooh, that's a
Mid
nice
60s.
period. Okay.
Stay tuned. It's
So
gonna be
after he got the $20 from Miles for the opening track in that's the rumor I heard,
Oh,
he
is
wanted
that
a
what it was?
well the rumor I heard, and someone correct me in the comments here, that Bill asked Miles for a publishing something in the for Kind of Blue, for the modal done that piano thing at the beginning, and he goes, "Hey, here's you," and he gives him a $20 bill. So, I don't know if that's true. I don't want to disparage the Miles
Hmm.
Davis estate, but anybody? No, okay.
Hmm.
Let's go on. Nope. Anything more you want to say about Bill Evans to coming,
No,
or
it's a great package. It's a celebration. It's an official release. There was a lot of work that went into it. There's an unbelievable team. I also want to shout out somebody, and that's Zach Shelby Cisco, who has been my associate producer on all these projects and is my production manager. And he has really been the guy that helped take the limiter off the Millennium Falcon 9 years ago, and we were able to go really fast. We were able to accomplish more working at Resonance. He works with me at Blue Note, even on these releases with Reel to Reel and Elemental and Jazz Detective. He's a wonderful guy. It takes a team. I'm
yeah,
one
I'll raise a
guy
glass to
here.
him if I had a glass. Well, I have a glass, but if I had anything substantial, this is water. But l'chaim to you all, my friends.
It's such a team effort. I'm going to have my pineapple seltzer.
Okay, let's end up with, of course, another. If Bill Evans is a person who's been reissued and archived a lot lately, the other probably person is Chet Baker. I'm a huge Chet Baker fan,
Mhm.
and I knew Chet Baker, but from '70s work, when I was picking up a few of his records while I was working the record stores. But again, revisiting him like in the late '80s with the film Let's Get Lost, the Bruce Weber, the photographer who did that film with a cameo by Chris Isaac and stuff. I think a year or two before he died. But talk about this, and I know this one you can talk about. It was recorded in Holland at Vara Studios. Apparently, it was
Yes.
recorded in this building right there.
Yeah.
The whole thing is the whole thing from there.
Yeah. There are two
Okay,
separate sessions that were done in 1979. So Chet
this is a
Baker
cool record. I really enjoyed this record. Late, it's kind of on the last 10 years of his life, but um, as seen there. But this is a cool record, and it sounds really good.
I'm glad you like it. I like
Yeah,
it a lot too. Again, this was a project that came into focus in the winter of 2022. I knew that I would be starting my new record label with Elemental Music, and I reached out to my associate Frank Jochimsen at the Netherlands Jazz Archive, and I asked if he had any Chet Baker. See, the guys at Elemental Music, the parent company that have given life to Jazz Detective, my executive producer on this, Jordy Soleil, is an enormous Chet Baker fan, like idolizes the guy. And we have been looking for Chet Baker releases to put out. We did Live in Paris last year, and then we put out now Blue Room, which are these two studio sessions from '79. And it's just a gorgeous 2 LP set. It's a studio record. I think that we also need to
right.
talk about something about Chet Baker because Chet Baker had these different periods in his career. And I personally am a really big fan of later era Chet Baker. You were talking about Let's Get Lost. I mean, these are gorgeous photos and writings that we have in this release here. Even speaking with the musicians on the date, Jean-Louis Rassenfos and also Phil Markowitz, who were blown away by the music when they heard it. That's a Verrill Oakland front and back covered shot, a great photographer. And those, I mean, we were able to bookend it with two pictures in the same shoot. It turned out really great. Burton,
If you're not, if you're only familiar with, for instance, the Blue Note, not Blue Note, but the Tone Poet, uh, was it not? What's the label? Not Pacific World? No,
Pacific Jazz.
Pacific Jazz. Yeah, of he sings, he plays, whatever it's called. If that's all you know, you owe it yourself to listen to this too. And the later period, I mean, the soundtrack to Let's Get Lost, it's kind of hard to get these days. But I had the CD, and I recently found a vinyl copy of that. Even at the end of his life, he was doing some cool ass stuff, I think. And same with those early those issues from the 50s of Sam Records issues in France. But this period, I was surprised. 79. I don't can't remember if I heard anything. I know he was putting out records, and some of the actual official records that came out, I wasn't all enthusiastic in the 80s, but this is a cool recording.
I really like it a lot too. I
Yeah,
mean, it's
yeah.
amazing. This, you know what, Mazzy, this is really a testament to what we are still uncovering all these decades later. Recordings that are stashed in different archives and different collections. But Frank Jochimsen found these tapes, and we knew that we were going to be doing this new Jazz Detective imprint. So he made me aware of these recordings, and we went to Elemental and we said, hey, this could be for the new imprint. And the music could just, it's great. It checks out. He was a virtuoso. And he also was a genius. He didn't read music, but he had something that was just in his DNA, in his articulation, the way that he played, his phrasing, things that a master musician had. And Chet Baker was so incredible, was just amazing. And I think that the liner notes from Jerome DeValk really talk about a lot of this, but you can also, for instance, read the essay from Richie Byrack talking about what it was like playing with Chet and the education that he learned. I mean, I really wanted to go all in. The music is the music, and the music stands on its own. All you have to do is listen. He's in great form here. He's in really, really good shape. But it really is we still find these kind of music, but these recordings decades and decades later. But this is a great recording. It's a great time capsule document. Again, I keep coming back to that, but that's what a lot of these are. And we wanted to build a great experience. I hope folks will really enjoy this and continue to come back to it. And, also maybe even reevaluate their listening of Chet Baker. I love I love the late 70s. I love the 1980s. You should also check out Live in Paris, which we put out with the folks at INA, the Radio
I
France
think
recordings
I
that
have.
came out last
I think
year.
I have most of them. I think I missed one or two, and I didn't buy every. It depends on the mood. I mean, it's like
Mhm.
anybody, budget, mood, a little bit of everything.
Sure. And this
Yeah,
recording also is one of the things I really enjoy. It's a mixture. There's instrumentals, but there's also some great vocals tracks. Listen to Chet sing Candy on here. I'm really
I
taken
love that
by that.
song. Yeah,
Me too.
yeah.
Me
I keep
too.
going back to. I mean, this is probably not the one people like think about, but I remember being like what, a 19 or 20-year old sing. Remember the Manhattan Transfer? When
Sure.
their first album came out on Atlantic Records, that very first tour, I saw them at a small club called the Boarding House in San Francisco. And on that album is an amazing vocal version, their harmonies of Candy. And I'm a fan of certain jazz vocals because I'm a fan of Lambert, Hendricks, and Ross, which they really emulate. I love that kind of scatty, jazzy vocalese thing. But I remember that their version of Candy is when I really kind of started getting into it in like 75 or whenever that was.
Hmm. Well,
Yeah.
there's a great rendition of it here, and just a lot
Yeah.
of other great tunes. I think this is a great record that I can listen to on repeat, frankly.
Yeah.
So I'm glad it resonated with you too.
So it looks like this is the one, two, three, four, five, six. Do you have six releases this record store day? Or is there,
Unbelievable. Can't
wow.
believe it. Unbelievable.
Okay. So we hope check these out. Those of you record store day coming up on Saturday in a couple weeks. Uh, Before we close out, any little other morsels of hints of things that you're working on that I know you can't really say specifically? Well, maybe you can. I don't know. You can say whatever you want to me, but I assume everything's in the jazz realm.
Yeah.
Uh, but
Mm,
other
not
artists beyond these artists or different artists, or
yes. I'm happy to explain. First of all, first of all, I want to just take a moment to thank everyone out there for their support. It's because of all of them supporting these projects that we're able to keep going and doing this, and I can't underestimate that enough. I am so grateful. I'm grateful to you, grateful to the team of people that I work with, Anne Braithwaite, who put us in
I
contact
want to
together.
thank Ann too for
Yeah,
hooking us
please.
up and sending me stuff. I mean, she was and we had a conversation and very sweet and was very helpful too. Hook and
This is it takes a whole team of people. We also had Lydia Liebman on the Bill Evans project and Shorefire Media on all three of the Left Bank titles. It takes a village to make this happen. But let's
right,
talk
Lydia.
about what I have coming. First of all, I'm going to talk about something that is not jazz related. As I had mentioned earlier, my Deep Digs label group, besides having Jazz Detective, is going to have a new imprint called Deep Digs. And Deep Digs is devoted to archival music of great importance, and it doesn't have to be jazz. So I'm very proud to say that we've struck a deal and are going to be putting out previously unissued recordings of Sister Rosetta Tharpe, the godmother of
Ooh,
rock and
ooh.
roll. That'll
Okay,
be coming out.
I want to talk about that. I'm a big fan of her. Yeah,
Well,
I
you're going
love
to love.
gospel music, and I love her bringing the electric guitar into the church.
Well, stay tuned. There's going to be a very tasty morsel, a really wonderful live recording that we found in the French government in their radio archives at INA from the ORTF that's never been out before. So we'll be coming with that soon. I also wanted to say that we're going to be presenting never before released music from the great Cal Jader, someone who I don't think gets celebrated enough. That'll be coming soon. Uh,
Cal Jader's one. I just recently acquired some records I did sell for a friend, some of the OJCs, obviously, from the 80s. Fantasy, obviously, is a label, and all of his stuff, most of his stuff was on Fantasy Records. And I have a handful myself. And he was one of the tail end of his career. I was able to see a lot in the 70s because he lived in the Bay Area and he played a lot of the North Beach clubs in the Bay Area. And I love that Latin jazz. I'm a big fan of vibes too. So that interests me. What period is that from?
that'll be the mid '60s.
Wow.
It's going to be it'll be a really tasty one and very important too, because I don't think that Cal Jader's had an archival project of this magnitude before, if anything, outside of a reissue. And Just wait. It'll be something really exciting to look forward to. We're also going to be putting out an LP of Bill Evans, of an unissued, never before released recording, which kind of falls in the same lines of the Treasures release. Stay tuned, but it's going to be something very epic that I think a lot of people are going to absolutely love. We're also going to have more music from Ahmad Jamal in the Emerald City Night series, the third volume that we're going to be putting out, which will be 66 to 1968. We'll be putting that out as well. And looking beyond, I should tell everyone that at the Resonance, oh, first of all, Corey Weeds and I, oh boy, we came together. We are brothers in spirit and kindred spirits with this music, and our taste is so similar. And it's been something that, like a lot of the people that I work with, we have these common passions that we share. But we're going to be putting out on the Reel to Reel label never before issued Shelley Mann recordings, which will be something to look forward to. The great West Coast drummer. I don't want to get
Studios or live at his club or
this will be two very important live recordings that the world's never heard
from the
before.
manhole?
Not from the manhole.
Okay,
Just
we'll
stay
wait and
tuned.
see. We'll stay
It'll
tuned.
be
Okay.
it's going to be exciting, and I think people will love that. And also looking beyond that, at the Resonance label, we're producing a very special project for the great Les McCann, which includes previously unissued recordings from the mid to late '60s. Stay tuned for that. It's going to be a 3 LP set. We're putting it together right now. That'll be for later this year. Um, I'm working with West Montgomery Estate on a couple of new productions. The first will be coming out later this year. And that's going to be a very important release from the '60s as well. Stay tuned. And beyond that, I'm working with Sonny Rollins right now on a box set, which is mind
Ooh,
blowing. And I feel
is that
so,
live or studio?
I don't
Okay.
want to give away all the secrets yet. I want people to be like, I want people to be knocked out when things come.
I have a message to you to know that you probably I have a friend who he has videos, the waxed, and there's actually a group of guys, I'm gonna give a shout out, who make videos called the Jazz Bums. And every Friday night they have a live stream at 5 p.m. Western, 8 p.m. And it's just a hangout. It's got some are new to jazz, some and Waxed is from DC area originally. And he said, well, I'm from that area, so say hi. You don't know him, but my friend Rob from the DC area said to say hi. So I'm giving a little chutzpah here, a little whatever you call it, from the Jazz Bums and the Wax. So to you, Zev. But
Thank you. Right back. Those guys are great. I really love following their posts and all the cool
yeah,
records
they're fun.
they share. And I'm working on an Art Tatum box set as well of
Ooh,
previously unreleased recordings. So that's like the next year for me. And that's not just next year because there's plenty of other things that I'm working on too, but I can't even talk about yet. But
yeah.
I just feel so grateful. I really, again, want to thank you, but all the fans out there, all the people that jump through hoops to get these records. I so appreciate all of you because I couldn't do it without everybody. And it allows us to keep going. I'm just beside myself with joy. I get to work on this every day, and I'm very grateful for that honor.
Okay. Well, we're going to close out now. I want to thank you, Zev, and I've enjoyed listening to these records. And I also want to thank you and uh, Anne and Lydia and all the people have sent some records, but also those of us who do these things, because most of us, hopefully all of us, love music, and it's about the music. But we appreciate when you make yourself accessible because there are some labels and some people that just don't put themselves out there. I mean, promotion is a part of the record business. Like you, I was in the record business for a decade, but also I market my photographers, and it's about promotion. And if people think that's hawking and selling, and that's part of it, you want to yell out and at least have make people accessible. It's not like the old days. You try to get it on top 40 or something or FM radio. There's not a lot of stations that are playing a lot of this music. So having you come up to our audience, I know you talk to the jazz people and the jazz writers, and that's an important group too. And maybe we expand to a different audience a little bit, to a wider audience. So I certainly appreciate having these conversations with people like you and Joe Harley and several others occasionally. So thank you so much, Zev. And God, gay gesund with this stuff. Good luck with this stuff.
Yeah, right back
We're gonna
at
we
you.
could have done a Yiddish version, not really, but I do appreciate that. So thank you, Zev.
Thank you, Mazzy. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity.
That would sound so like, oh, I love you. This is like kumbaya moment here. But thank you all at the end of like Passover and Easter week. We're here, hawking our wares, as they say. But thank you. Mazzy loves you, and we'll see you next time.